Hi, and welcome to One Simple Recipe, where we're hoping to get you one step closer to better health. I'm Judy Matusky, registered dietitian and culinary nutritionist with Athens Nutrition. And today it's all about whole grains. And I get so excited about this because I love whole grains, but I feel like they just don't get enough love. And sometimes I feel like you see the word or hear the word whole grain and you're kind of like, not that interested, but I want to get you interested. So let's talk. We're going to talk about some of the different grains, and then we're going to make a 6-grain, I don't want to say oatmeal because it's more like a porridge because it has all these other grains. It's not just oatmeal. All right. So we are spending time stocking your 2025 healthy pantry. I think we've covered all of the food groups now. So we hit vegetables, we did fruit, we did dairy, we did lean proteins, and now we're going to talk about whole grains. All right, so I have a whole bunch of them here because I wanted to share these with you, and I thought making this 6-grain porridge oatmeal would be a great way to combine all these different grains for you. All right, so what do I have here in front of me? Some beautiful, gorgeous grains. All right, so I'm going to start from this end and I'll work my way over. The first that I have here is bulgur, and bulgur is a cracked wheat. It is pre-cooked, it's steamed. So what's great about bulgur is that you don't really have to cook it per se. You just are going to cover it with boiling water and let it sit for about 15 minutes, and it's ready to go in recipes and salads. Tabbouleh, which is typical for a salad that you're probably most familiar with. Then we have barley, and barley I feel like is really like the forgotten whole grain darling. No one really uses barley, and we should be. It's just this fabulous whole grain that is very high in soluble fibers, which is so important for cardiac health as well as gut health. Most of us are going to find it in this whiter pearled form. That's just, you do lose a little bit of fiber because they take the hull off, but it is a little bit faster cooking. You can get one with the hull, it just takes a little bit longer to cook. So we're going to be using barley in this porridge, and then we have millet, this beautiful kind of golden, really tiny round grain. This is gluten-free, so it's awesome. Cooks up a little bit more quickly than some of these others, only maybe in about 20 minutes. Has kind of like a, sort of a real like nutty flavor. I feel like all of these whole grains end up, having a nutty flavor. Then most of us are familiar with rice. This is just short grain brown rice, which we're going to be using in here as well. Then we have the 2 different types of oats. We have steel cut oats, and then we have the old-fashioned rolled oats. And just the difference there, they're both whole grain, both from the oat groat, but the steel cut oats are basically just the grain is just cut with a steel blade into little like pieces. So this takes a little bit longer to cook, which is great though for blood sugar. So there's a little bit slower absorption of digestion with the steel cut oats. So for those of you who just love oatmeal but are managing blood sugar, it's usually we do a little bit better with the steel cut oats, but even the rolled oats are fine. Same thing, whole grain. These are just steamed and rolled. So they do cook usually within about 5 minutes, and are great for making granola and just making an oatmeal that you might want to have a little bit faster. The 2 remaining ones here, I have farro, which I think a lot of us are hearing a lot about. Again, an ancient grain, it's been around for eons. It's just a type of wheat, again, cooks up probably in about 30 minutes or so. And my favorite, and it's going to be backwards for you, but it's kamut, K-A-M-U-T. It's the brand name for this type of wheat. It's like this golden, this has become my absolute favorite whole grain. When you cook it, it cooks in about 30 minutes or so, maybe 40 minutes, but it stays really crunchy on the outside, but the interior is very buttery. It's just has an incredible texture and a really beautiful flavor. So if you can get your hands on some kamut, K-A-M-U-T, that would be one that I would try and experiment with. I put a great recipe up online for a strawberry spinach salad using kamut as part of the grain in that salad mix. So you could check that out on judymatusky.com. All right, so we have all these grains. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create this multi-grain, 6-grain pantry porridge that I'm going to call it. All right, so let me move a few things aside so I can bring it over. You're going to need, if you want to make this, the recipe is online. It does make a lot, but the idea is that you're making this in bulk, so then you're taking out a cup at a time when you're ready to cook with it. So we're going to make the base of this, and I'm going to use this fairly large jar. And we're going to fill it with all of these things. The recipe has like specific amounts for different types of grains, but quite honestly, it almost doesn't matter. You can mix and match the grains. You can use a little more or a little less of certain grains. You can skip one of them if you don't have them, and you can use more of another grain. It doesn't really matter because you're just using a cup of this mixture when you go to cook it anyway. So it could be a blend of a bunch of different grains. But this was a recipe that was given to me years ago from actually a former client of mine, and it was like in her family, and she had shared it with me, and I just thought it was so fun because it kind of, I think oatmeal can be a little bit boring, and this is not boring. So you might want to, give this a try if you're an oatmeal lover. I think you'll really love this. All right, so we have bulgur here, and this I think is about a cup of bulgur. So we're going to pour that in. This I think is about a cup of the barley that goes in, and our millet. Same. I think these are all about a cup in the measurement on the recipe, but again, it doesn't really matter. Then we're going to add our brown rice. And the largest volume that's going in are our oats. We're using both the old-fashioned oats, which is this is almost 3 cups, I think, of the rolled oats. And then just a little bit less of the steel-cut oats. All right, so isn't this great? I mean, you're making this incredible whole grain blend. And what's so nice about this is that you're bringing in so many nutrients. So it's not just fiber, and it's not just all the B vitamins and, probably 10% of our magnesium, but we forget that whole grains are really a good source of protein as well. So for every half cup of cooked whole grain, we're probably getting between 5 and maybe 10 grams of protein, depending on the grain we're using. Now I'm just adding some seeds. So this is a mixture of chia seeds and flax seeds. You could use all of one, that's fine. You could use ground flax seeds instead of the whole flax seeds. Ground flax seeds would probably be a little bit better because you'll absorb then the nutrients from the flax seeds. Whole flax seeds just don't really break down and digest. We just don't really digest them. All right, so this is our blend, and I'm just going to give it a stir just so that everything gets mixed up. Now, with whole grains, like what I like to do is keep them in jars, whether they're larger jars or smaller jars, depending on how much of the grain I have. Label it. Usually I like to date it. And I have a lot of room in my freezers because I have many freezers in this house. So I keep my grains in the freezer. I feel like they're fine out when you're in your pantry if you're going to use them, pretty regularly. But if you don't want to just let them sit around for too long. So to keep them fresher, I usually do like my nuts and seeds. I usually keep my whole grains and all my whole grain flours, the flours in particular. Because once a grain is processed a little bit and ground up into flour, it releases the oils and the germ that's in that grain, and that tends to go rancid if it's out at room temperature for too long. So even though these are whole and intact and they haven't been ground, if it might take me a little while to work my way through them. I do like to keep them in my freezer, but if you're they would be fine in your pantry. All right, the two that I didn't add the kamut and the farro. That's not on the recipe, but you could. I'm going to leave those to the side. I'll cook them separately with something else. So here's our blend, all right? So it makes a lot. So again, if you want to cut the recipe in half, you can, if you don't think you're going to eat your way through this much porridge, pantry porridge, the multigrain porridge. All right, so what's tricky about this recipe, and I think this was a little bit, it's like a question mark as if there was a typo. Someone had reached out to me about that. It does require a lot more liquid than just oatmeal because these grains that we're using, a lot of them absorb a lot more liquid than oatmeal does. Even steel-cut oat absorbs a lot more liquid than just the old-fashioned rolled oats. So it does require at least 4 cups of liquid to 1 cup of this grain mix. So I have about 3 cups of milk and 1 cup of water, well, maybe about 1.5 cups of water. If you're using chia seeds in the blend, you probably want about 4.5 cups of liquid to 1 cup of the grain mix because chia seeds really absorb the liquid. Or you can, other than that, I think 4 cups would be fine. So you could do 2 cups of milk plus 2 cups of water. You could do all water. I haven't done it with all milk. I was concerned that some of these grains might need they might not cook as well in all milk. They might need some of that water just to absorb the liquid. All right, so I'm adding the cup of the mix right in. That's not warmed up or anything. And then I'm just gonna set it to like a medium heat, and I'll stir it just once in a while because you don't want anything to stick on the bottom. But kind of medium heat, give it a stir just so that you don't want to scorch the milk or you don't want anything to stick. Then once it kind of comes up to a little bit of a bubble, then turn it down, keep the lid on, and most of the grains that we used in this blend will cook within about 30 minutes. And again, most of that milk is going to absorb. So then it's ready to go. Now, what I did to show you, I did cook a batch, oh gosh, a couple of weeks ago, and I had this in my freezer. So what I love about grains as well is that you can certainly batch cook them. You can keep them in the fridge, then reheat them throughout the week. You can batch cook them, put them in your freezer, take them out later, you know, a month or two down the road, and then eat them then. And the other thing with when you batch cook grains like this, when you cook and you cool down a grain in your refrigerator and then you eat it the next day or you eat it later, whether you heat it back up or you're eating it cold, during that cooling process, there's the starch in the grain, there's a percentage of that forms what's called resistant starch. And this happens during the cooking, then the cooling process. And that's a good thing for blood sugar management. So some of those resistant starches don't get really digested and absorbed. So there tends to be a little bit of a better blood sugar response when you've cooked a grain, cooled the grain, and then eat the grain than when it's immediately cooked and eaten. So it's just something to keep in mind. All right, so this was the porridge, the multi-grain, 6-grain porridge that I made, like I said, a couple of weeks ago. I had it in the freezer, just defrosted it. I did cook it with some dried fruit. There's raisins in here. So if you wanted to add raisins, you could just add the raisins right now. I think the recipe says add them after it comes up to the boil and then add the raisins. I don't think it really matters. Or any dried fruit for that matter, apricots, or whether you want to add figs or even some dates. You can add them as well. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So this is about the consistency. It could get a little bit thicker than this, again, depending on the liquid you're using and the amount, but it doesn't seize up as much as oatmeal does, because oatmeal really tends to get pretty clumped together, like it's pretty sticky. And it's absolutely delicious. So then you can top it, obviously, with anything you want, whether you're using fresh fruit or frozen, defrosted frozen fruit, or a little drizzle of honey, maple syrup, cinnamon, vanilla. You know, you can play with it. And what I love about this, and it might sound strange, but this, when it's sweetened a little bit, this is like almost like a pudding. It's like if you like rice pudding, you would like this as a pudding because it makes it a nice little afternoon snack, whether it's cold or reheated. And it also, I think, is great. Even can be like almost like a dessert, depending on how sweet you want to make it. But I love it like that. I probably eat a multi-grain porridge like this more as a snack than I even do for breakfast. I just think it makes a really great midday or mid-afternoon snack. So with, usually with a glass of milk and some fruit, I just love it. So great source of protein. We're adding the milk for that. It's helping with the protein. So many nutrients, so many. B vitamins, fiber, magnesium, manganese. I mean, the list goes on. And quite a decent percentage of those when we're eating whole grains. So if you're not including whole grains in the diet, or if you struggle because of celiac disease or you need gluten-free, a lot, like I said, I think 3 out of the 6 were gluten-free grains. So you can make this with gluten-free grains for sure. So give it a shot. We're going to continue on with stocking your healthy pantry porridge, stocking your healthy pantry with, we're going to talk a little bit about some desserts coming up as well as flavor bombs. So I think that's so essential when you're eating healthier options and things are a little bit lighter. Sometimes we have to amp up those flavors a little bit. So we're going to talk about how you can do that in a really healthy way, and then staying true to your nutrition goals. So we'll continue to do that over the next several weeks. So if you try the porridge, let me know. If you like my videos, please share them with friends and family. You can always check out all of our cooking videos on Athens Nutrition YouTube channel, as well as they live on the Athens Nutrition Facebook page for a while as well. And as always, certainly reach out with any nutrition questions or concerns because we're here to help. All right, stay well till next week. Bye-bye.